instead of making a facade to try and keep someone, it's like my goal in life is to be me and hopefully be acceptable. If not, then I'm with the wrong person, and focus on taking that risk though, to be really authentic. And like, what do you have to lose? Like, you're either living in a delusion or you're with the right person and they accept you just how you are. And what an amazing freedom that is.
Hey, you. Thanks for tuning in. Just a quick heads up, this episode is rated R, so expect that there will be some language that you may not want your kids to hear, lots of adult topics, and quite possibly some explicit conversations about sex. This episode is probably not safe for work, though, I guess it depends on where you work. Welcome, everybody, to Pleasure Central Radio. This is your host, Radiant Rebecca, and I have two amazing human beings here in the virtual studio. I have Sherry, who was on episode, I can't even remember which one, the Sex Talk and Blowjob Tips episode many, many years ago, and her new partner, Brian. Hi, Brian and Sherry.
Hello.
Hi. Good to see you.
You too. So, you guys are traveling around the country right now. I see you're in your camper van and checking in from, where are you right now?
We're in Oregon, La Grande, Oregon, near some hot springs that Brian actually found this place. And so that's where we're at right now, where our destination is Phoenix on October 1st.
Lovely. And I remember the last episode you and I talked about, Sherry, you had just finished a Quodoushka workshop. That's where you and I met. We'd both done a Quodoushka. And now you're going back to do some training with the same group of people. This is a much longer ceremony, but I have done this one too. So I'm really excited for what's going to happen for you, for both of you.
Me too. Thank you. I'm super excited. I actually was able to do a test run on the toy that I bought with you recently. I used that this morning, and yeah, it was quite fun to play with that.
Are you a happy camper, Sherry?
Yeah, really. What a nice way to start the day.
I couldn't help with that little fun.
I'm doing homework for my school right now.
I love it. How is the homework working out for you, Brian?
Interesting. Is that something different to wake up to? Feeling like if I was doing that, I'd be getting in trouble for this.
Really?
Yeah. It's not true, but that's what it felt like.
Okay. All right. Good. Yeah, I would be surprised if, I know Sherry pretty well. I'd be surprised if that was true. So. But it is interesting, those old mental tapes that we have running in our head, right? I remember it took me years, literally, to learn how to be natural in my expression of my orgasm, because I grew up being so quiet so nobody else in the house would hear me. And I know that that's pretty normal. It's not unusual. All right, so we wanted to talk a little bit about intimacy and honesty. Now, you guys are the ones that picked that topic. Do you want to give a little brief introduction to why those two things are the most important thing for you to share today?
Well, yeah, I can definitely start with that. I think that Brian and I are we're 6 months into our relationship, even though we've done like tons of stuff like that most people probably wouldn't do together for like a year or so. Like, I moved in with him, and then we emptied out the house, moved into the RV, and now we left New Jersey and we're in Oregon. So we're on like the accelerated path. And as naturally that happens, like people, when they get together, you go through like the honeymoon phase and everything, and then your stuff starts coming up and coming out and all of that. So in that, both of us are learning about how to deal with things when they come up, how to, I don't know, be in the moment and honest about something when it's coming up. And it's just, there's so many fears around like hurting each other's feelings, or we both do so much work. We've both done so many well, actually, I guess Brian's experience is a little bit different. I'll let you talk, but all the retreats and all the spiritual study that I've done, it's like I'm constantly noticing my ego and noticing my thoughts and everything like that. So it's like getting out of my head and getting it out of my mouth and talking to another human about it. And it's like a whole new level of expression and compassion and love, like unconditional love. I feel like that's basically what this is a journey for both of us into unconditional love in partnership without dragging all the baggage, or at least not beating each other with our baggage or whatever happens. So something like that. And we've had a couple of breakthroughs like really recently that I think we're going to get into today, but it's an amazing experience for me so far.
I love it. What about you, Brian?
So for me, we started the relationship on this awesome premise that we were going to be totally authentic. Like, we made the deal. We weren't going to wear our most attractive outfits. We were just going to show up to our first date, like just being us, like not go for the moon and be honest. And I told Cher, like our first in-person meeting, I told her sort of all the shamey things that I've had hiding in my closet that I haven't want other women to know about, and always had it in the back of my head, like, well, if I told them these things, then they wouldn't really care about me. So I just led with that, and it was like the first date. So it was really this thing of like being authentic and being really expressive and honest. And I think as our relationship's gone on, especially when Sherry moved in, and all of a sudden there was no more hiding space and she saw everything, I started to get more and more fear built up and started to like put on a facade or a shell, maybe even. And like the stakes got real. And, when I'm doing my goofy stuff, like getting mad in traffic or just whatever is going on, I would sit and think like, wow, she just saw that. I wonder how that went over. She's not saying anything about it. So I just started to develop fear around that and started not talking about stuff. And some of it was definitely around sex. So I felt like I was getting like squished down into a box. So the last week we've really got to like unpack some of that stuff and really sort of expand out and get back to like the nature of our relationship is really being like super expansive together and really authentic and the whole of who we both are.
That's a really beautiful statement. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I think while I'm listening to that, and I'm sure there's somebody else hearing this conversation and wondering, how did you face that fear? I mean, obviously it was building up for a while. What did you guys do to make that possible for you to talk about it?
So for me, I've been working on my relationship with myself a lot. And in prior situations, if I was like dealing with a breakup, I would think it would be like the shamey thing. And I would be mad at myself, and my self-talk would be like, I hate you. Why do you always ruin my life? Why can't you get it right? And because my relationship to myself has changed, it was like, I might not be right for Sherry, but I'm right for me. And no matter how this ends, like, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to take care of myself. I still care about myself. And that was the space that made it like, I'm leaning into this. So I pulled her over on the side of the road and was like, hey, we got some stuff to talk about. So we sat in a rest stop until dark. We ended up not getting to our destination until like 2:30 that night, because it was just a priority to just, we're going to talk about this and get these hard to deal with things out on the table. If we have to fight, we have to fight and get through it.
So for me, how do I get these things out? My journey, or at least my focus the past couple of years, has been like just being able to feel and not always be so perfectly put together and controlling what the external world might see or perceive, and just like really just like whatever's there, just let it flow out to the best of my ability. And I'm still working on that. But with Brian, whenever things would come up for me, like something triggers my abandonment fears or my whatever stories I have about how relationships end, and I need to defend myself and prepare so that I don't get this big blow of a surprise of someone, whatever it is. I've just begun to like allow myself to just literally have a tantrum, like crying, screaming, which I would never do. I would never really emote to the extent that it needed to come out. And it's certainly not about Brian for the most part. It's like whatever's buried in me that was in my tissues or in whatever, I'm finally just letting it out. And I've just had these moments where I would think to myself, like, oh my God, he just watched that happen to me. How is he going to be attracted to me again? Or like, how do I even bounce back from that and be normal and like go to dinner after I just had that terrible tantrum? And I think that's for me, that's what's gotten us to this point, is just like not keeping it like the words and the sentences. There's things that I haven't said, like from a logical standpoint, but everything that I've been feeling, I've just let it come out and just let it sit there. Like, I don't even know what this is, but I'm hysterical. I wake up in the morning, I'm crying. I really don't exactly know why, but I'm just letting it come out. And I think that on an energetic level, that's been like a catalyst for something to happen, because he's over here feeling like, how do I console this person? Maybe, I guess. What do I do? And I'm just like, so neither one of us has a tool all the time, but it's like, we're just letting the universe like flow this, whatever it is, through us. And both of us pray a lot. Like, I will say to God, like, please take this away from me. Please help me feel better. Please help me resolve this. Please tell me the lesson I'm supposed to learn. I'm suffering. I'm causing this somehow, like, and I think the more that you ask the higher power to like intervene and help, along with being like natural with your letting things flow, like something's going to happen. You just can't keep going.
So my side of watching that has been that you started to get upset, and you did a really good job of almost entirely not making it about me. So it made it easier to witness and care about you, since I didn't have to defend myself. I could care about you and your feelings. And so I didn't have that feeling at all of like, oh my God, who's this crazy person? It was much more a thing of like compassion and understanding the things that were driving it, like knowing about your past and childhood and the things that could be triggering you, and just really feeling compassion and love for you. So I didn't feel that at all. And then that became my tool of when I could see, like, I have a hard time being that vulnerable. I don't let myself fall apart in front of other people. And I want to be able to be more free. So I have a story that like, if I did, then I wouldn't be acceptable. So I can turn it around and look at, well, when she's doing that, I don't feel like she's a crazy person or get this away from me. Sherry's so put together and sort of accomplished and sort of always does it right. So when and that's intimidating. So her places, her soft spots, her broken places are actually like access points for me. So it's really feels so much closer, and want to like draw her to me and just hug her and listen and give her a kiss on the forehead and be there for all that stuff. So the way I work in my head is I turn that around and like, well, if that feels good to me, maybe that would feel good to her, and she wouldn't be judging me either, and she would like the opportunity to be closer to me. And it's not this shamey thing. It's actually something I can relax into. So I've tentatively started to trust that idea that like, it's okay to be vulnerable with her too. And she's not going to leave me either. And it's turned into like, I can't believe the things that she's willing to be present for and listen to. It's like, I don't even tell some of my guy friends some of this stuff. Like, I can't believe you're my girlfriend and we're this close and intimate, and I can trust you, and I'm telling you this thing that I think you're going to scream and like slap me, and instead you're just nodding your head and helping me go through stuff. Like, that's just, I don't know, I've just never even dreamed of being that close to another person.
What a beautiful new way to look at relationships, right? It's interesting when you guys said intimacy and honesty being the theme. It immediately made me think about, I actually may have said this while you guys were here visiting me last week, but when you're unwilling to show who you really are, the price of that is that you also cannot be accepted for who you really are. And it sounds like you guys have found the payoff of that. You figured out how to be yourself and how to be open and vulnerable and real, and then allow the other person to accept you as you are. And I can see the smiles on your faces and the glowing on your faces to tell me that that is doing something powerful, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yesterday morning, Sherry woke up and was upset and angry. And I just asked her what was going on and tried to make space for her to get it out. And I woke up feeling the best I felt, and I don't know how long. So I really had the space to just like, well, whatever she's going to say, I'm just going to not make it about me. And she started laying out like 2 months of judgments about me. And I'm like, whoa, if this is really how you feel, like, I don't think this is the relationship for you. Like, if that's really all true for you, wow, like, I don't think you should be in this relationship. And I'm thinking, like, I should do her the kindness of leaving. Like, and when we stayed in it and she said, and I want to stay in the relationship, at some point it opened this door into like, oh my God, she's seeing these things I'm trying to hide or wish I could hide or whatever, and still loves me and accepts me. And instantly I literally felt like I went through a portal to a new world. It instantly felt more open, spacious, and it felt like things that I'm really stuck with or have shame about or no clue what to deal with, all of a sudden they're on the table for like, wow, I have this best friend that's like in a loving way sees my warts, and that might be the way to transform them. That might be like the access point to the wisdom of like, what do I do about this stuff? And that feels like the most safe, close, amazing place. And it was like, I didn't say it out loud, but I felt like, wow, we just married our souls. Like, something's transformed in this relationship that's like, you can't go back. Like, we're through a one-way gate, and we've just now connected in a way that's can't be broken. And the way forward is to like, so we did it again today. We talked more deeply and really around sex today. And it's just like the opportunity there to transform. I've just all of my sexual experiences, not all, but a lot of them certainly formative, were around pornography. So I feel like orgasms are driven by visual stimulus, and really seeing that's kind of a fantasy, a crutch, and it brings shame to me. And that there's this deeper way to better sex and orgasms and all that stuff that's through this intimacy and sharing and really being honest about where we are. Like, maybe we stop in the middle of sex and like, hey, this is what's going on for me. And my performance anxiety tells me you can't do that. Like, men don't not have sex and say like, I have whatever goofy feelings going on. And I'm thinking like, wow, that's what I'm going to do. So that feels like the next frontier is to like really open things up that way.
And as we were talking this morning, and Brian was sharing some things with me about his past and everything, I'm like so grateful for Quodoushka and orgasmic meditation and all the things that I have done where I've sat in circles with men and women who have talked so openly about shame. And I mean, I literally don't feel anything but like happiness that he can say whatever he says, and that I have no like, I don't have a reaction to it. It's more of a curiosity than anything. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Or there are things that I feel like, because I've sat in so many circles, sacred circles with smudging and everything, and hearing testimony from men and women about sexual shame, it's like, I don't think there's anything that I'm going to hear that's going to make me go, what? Like, it's just, it's common. And I guess I try to distill it down to, it doesn't matter what it is, but whatever it is, it's like that's that thing that we're holding on to, and we're allowing that to be the blockage to more pleasure, more intimacy, more vulnerability. And it's just like a piece of energy. Like, the data doesn't matter. It's all neutral. It's a thing that happened. It doesn't have to have meaning. We just have to, I believe in forgiveness, like forgive myself, and maybe like mentally connect with the person and try to just not let it have a hold on me, and not be like a barrier for me to move forward in my life.
That's lovely. And I love that you talk about that thing being a block when really the antidote to shame is sunlight. You bring something that you're shameful about into the light, then it loses its shame hold very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So true.
Lovely. Okay, well, you guys have brought up sex a couple of times and just kind of touched on the general topic. Is there anything, since this is Pleasure Central Radio, is there anything that you would like to talk about a little bit more in depth and have it be, more of a consultation with me, if you will? You're welcome to ask questions or share anything that you'd like to have some thoughts on.
Yeah, so it's actually one of the things that was the genesis of living in this camper. So my peak sexual experience was Sherry and I took the camper to New Jersey, and it was just like a 3-day trip. And we had sex in the middle of it, and I've never had this experience before. I couldn't tell that we were kissing, and I couldn't tell the difference between my tongue and penis. Like, they were both like in this amazingly perfect state. And it was based on connection. Like, it wasn't like a scene out of pornography. It was just this, like, I felt so perfectly connected to her. And we were kissing. So obviously face to face, and it was total bliss. And I felt so perfectly connected. I didn't even have an orgasm. I just was like, I'm just going to let this go down all by itself. And when it goes the other way and I don't feel as amazingly connected, and I want to, look at her body or, have a fantasy or whatever to get to, a super high state of arousal, it's like a scary thing. Like, oh no, I thought this was like the perfect relationship. And why don't I know how to will that amazing connection sex on just because I thought of it? And then there's performance anxiety, which I think most men suffer from. I definitely have that fear of like, I'm not going to do it right. And I'm just a failure as a man. So, the tools that are at hand in that moment are like, well, think of something that's made me horny in the past, or like do a different position, especially one that's less intimate. Because when we're looking at each other, I feel like sometimes it's just too vulnerable, and that is distracting from what's going on sexually. And I'm losing not interest, but like, I don't know, whatever's coming in is like definitely anti-erection. So, so I'm wrestling that, but our conversation today was like definitely opening to the door to at least starting to explore that, and being really clear. Like, the answer isn't have like, 10 women stacked up and, or whatever the combination would be. It's not that. It's like being more honest and starting to like really do that emotional work, especially in the heat of the moment. So, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say about that. It feels like a muscle that I almost found by accident. And then now it's, well, how do I work that out more? How do I develop that so it's reliably available?
Okay. That is a really great question. And the first thing I want to say is nobody knows how to will that connective sex into being on demand. That's just not a thing. And part of it is because when we're wanting to have that connection and make that nice and strong, it requires both people and it requires something new. So we can't go and do the thing that worked last time because it doesn't have the fuel for us anymore. So we have to be both present and ready and available, and then let something new take us someplace new. So it's a fun thing to think about, and trying to get it to the point where it's like 100% of the time you can do it is going to be majorly frustrating. So I recommend, if you're wanting to aim at it anytime that you want to do that, aim at it. But remember, what you're aiming at is connection and something new between the two of you. That'll make it way more fun to explore this process and a lot less pressure.
What are your thoughts about when we're having sex and you're not as like in that heart space, and you want to look at my body, or you want to sort of like to focus on something different in order to get yourself over?
Yeah, so like, especially I think friends are going to listen to this, but I think other people need to, from a male's perspective, like, pornography is so pervasive and it so damages your sexuality, and I have shame and whatever else in there, and all that gets in the way. Like, seeing Sherry naked, I feel like I'm going to get in trouble if I look too much. And it's like, it's just weird, the shame stuff. And I really want to heal that, because that feels like a huge piece of happiness. And it's weird that it's like the shame says I can't look at her that way and enjoy what we're doing. And so that's not okay. I feel like I'm going to get in trouble. And then those feelings that come up, the answer is to like go look at porn and, create new shame, which is like really a weird spiral of like always being stuck in that shame instead of working through it. And it's, I don't know, for me, there's something really like in this porn era that we're in, that's like learning to be in love and aroused with a real woman, which is like one person, not, the endless variety that porn is, and the crazy false reality that creates. And yeah, so I think the question, if anything, was like, any insights on how to heal that, because it comes up in the middle of it. Like that shame shows up in the middle of sex a lot, and shame's a really hard place to talk from.
And shame's a really hard place to have sex from.
Yeah, for sure.
You thought anger sex was weird. Shame sex is awful. Okay, so what I'm thinking about shame and sex and how it comes up, there's a couple of things. So one is, you guys, there's a book called What You Really, Really Want, and it's fascinating. It's a good book about looking at and addressing what your real fantasies are and your desires are, and the things that have taught you about that, and what society has taught you about yourself and about other people. So it's a good way of deconstructing, pulling apart all of these things that might be the key to shame that you haven't realized is not something that you want to own anymore. So that might be a fun thing for you to do together, because it sounds like these conversations where you're opening yourself and being a bit vulnerable are really useful kindling for your relationship and for your sexuality. So you might start with that. Also, you guys have both been to a Quodoushka workshop, right? So you're familiar with the 5 types of orgasm for men and for women?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Have you experienced and played with those very much, with the different types of orgasms?
No. I mean, I feel like almost like I have an aversion to doing exercises and everything like after workshops. So and I think that's part of my cycle of like being hard on myself and assuming my body can't achieve what other women's bodies can. And I have a little bit of that program running. So anyway, I don't think that I have experienced or tried to like, get into that higher level orgasm space.
For me, I've had sometimes, so I don't remember them super well, but the first level is like, it feels good. And then there's the repulsion afterwards. Like I have to get up right now and go have a snack, or I need a drink, or there's just some reason I have to get out of bed and get away from you. And I sort of alternate between that and then the next level of like still feeling and staying connected and being willing to move into that. But beyond that, I haven't had a higher level experience. So I think we have this work, both of us, around shame and connection and all that stuff to get to that point. So I feel like that's next for us, and this is the work we're trying to do to access that.
Okay. I'm glad that you guys both said that, because you misunderstood what I said. I'm going to clarify, and then this will make it easier. So you guys were both talking about the levels of orgasm, which I think of as how much energy you get out of the orgasm as a ratio to how much energy you put in, right? So like a level 1 or 2 orgasm, it takes a lot more energy to have it, and then you don't want to stay in that energy because it's not a juicy energy anymore. And the level 3 and 4 takes less energy to have and gives you a whole lot more. So there's more of a desire and interest to continue that, and you're adding more to your battery, so you have more energy for the rest of your life as well. But that isn't what I was talking about. I was actually talking about the different types of orgasms. So I run into this fairly often in my practice, where men will have this idea, because this is what our society teaches them and what porn teaches them. And I'm not anti-porn, by the way. I'm totally comfortable with porn, and it can be very useful. And it sounds like it's been a problem for you, so you do what you need to do. However, the different types of orgasms, the one that most men think of as an orgasm is the one where you have a hard cock and you ejaculate. And that's generally the only quote-unquote valid orgasm. And then the there are 4 other types of orgasms. So there's one where you have a soft cock and you ejaculate. There's one where you have a soft cock and you don't ejaculate, but you do have an orgasm. There's one where you have a hard cock and you don't ejaculate. And then there's the breath orgasm, which is the entire whole body orgasm. And these are all listed in the Quodoushka book. So if you want to go and look them up, you can go and check them out. But one of the reasons I bring it up is because a lot of shame for men in our culture resides around what those are and what they look like, and how it can't have been a complete lovemaking session if we didn't have that one orgasm with the hard cock and the ejaculation. So it sounds like you guys have started to reprogram some of what you think is sex and intimacy, and checking out that book and some of the things that remind you about different ways of beauty in the different types of orgasms might be really helpful. I found for myself that if I look back over a night or two with a lover that I really enjoyed, and I get to look and go, oh, that was a south orgasm, and that was and then when we did that, oh my gosh, we actually had like 7 orgasms that night that we weren't really counting. It changes your perception of yourself. Instead of I'm acting like the porn people versus I'm having a really, really good connection with this really beautiful person that I care about a lot. And it's expressing itself in different ways at different times. How interesting.
I love that.
Yeah, that's interesting. It just butts right up against that like performance thing of like, I'm not doing it right. So it feels like so much to let go into. And yeah, I guess that's the wild thing about this relationship is I have enough trust for Sherry, and she is a big enough container to do that work and let go into, which is an amazing thing. Right now we're on a daily basis where every step we take in our relationship is like, this is new territory. Like this is the most whatever I've ever, and a lot of it's intimacy. Like I've just never been to this place with a woman before. So it's awesome. The valleys and the scary parts can be rough, but we break through into something new, and it's just like, wow, I just didn't know this was possible in life.
I love hearing that.
Me too. Yeah, I feel like I have a lot of like judgment of myself as far as like sex goes because of my limited definition of orgasm and my sort of like belief that I have about myself that there's something off about my vagina because I'm not able to experience the intense pleasure that I believe other people do. And a lot of it is just a story, but also being in Quodoushka and reading the book and knowing that there's other possibilities out there. Like, well, why haven't I had that? Or why can't I do that? And so I'm really like a achievement driven person. And I feel like a failure, I guess. And so that's not sexy. And I think I could do a lot of work around, not work at all, but just like not having a goal of some kind of a climax and just touching and enjoying and talking and, like relaxing. Yeah. It's funny. It's like all this work that I think I could do. It's like the trick is not to do any work and to just feel and breathe and relax.
Yeah, it's funny how little work can be sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially when it's play. And here's another thing that you guys would probably find really fun and helpful. I did an episode way, way back at the beginning where I talked about 90-second waves and waves of energy and how to follow the wave of the energy. And part of the reason that I did that episode was I had a lover at the time who was so goal focused that he would just pump my pussy so hard for like 45 minutes. And at some point I was like, okay, look, that is really fun. And I definitely like that about a quarter of the time. And the rest of the time, it would be nice if we followed the energy a bit more instead of forcing it to be someplace that it's not. So what we started doing is making an agreement that, hey, tonight we're both sleepy and we want to play, but we're not going to expect to have anything happen. However, we want to follow whatever waves show up. So we'll be laying in bed and falling asleep, and then they would touch me someplace, and then I would feel something, and then I would touch them back a little bit. And it was very short. Like, seriously, it would be 90 seconds from the beginning to the peak and then down to the other side. And then we would just go back to laying together. And sometimes that would string a whole bunch of those together, and sometimes it would end in sex and orgasm, and sometimes it was just because it felt nice. And it was a good way of connecting. It was a way of connecting physically, and it was a way of connecting heart to heart, and it was a way of allowing each other to be where we were right in the moment. And it was just nice taking that pressure off and relaxing and recognizing that what we were looking for was the energy, not the end. We're looking for the crest and the expansion and the feeling pushed forward or pulled in or any of that.
That sounds so good. And I love your voice. Like, I love how you describe it. So
Thank you very much. My nice little radio mic right here.
yeah. Yeah, like I really, it's funny. I guess it just never seems like an option to do less. It's kind of like, if we're not going to do everything, we should do nothing and then not talk about it and then just be kind of like, I don't know, disconnected.
You know where that ends, right?
Where,
Completely disconnected and not wanting to be together.
yeah,
Which, I mean, you know.
yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's today's agreement. Literally, today's agreement is to communicate more. And when that stuff comes up, start talking. If it's right in the middle of it, talk about it right then and there and really be honest about what's going on.
That's lovely that you're connecting the honesty and the openness with the intimacy that comes at the end of that.
Yeah, well, I think my encouragement and message to other people, because it's something I've wrestled with, is like, instead of making a facade to try and keep someone, it's like my goal in life is to be me and hopefully be acceptable. If not, then I'm with the wrong person, and focus on taking that risk, though, to be really authentic. And like, what do you have to lose? Like, you're either living in a delusion or you're with the right person and they accept you just how you are. And what an amazing freedom that is. It seems so not what our culture teaches us, to try and be the right person and all the games you can play to keep somebody or whatever, but just being authentic and keeping that the goal seems really, at least for us, because we're both really aligned, just seems really where the whole point of it. And it feels like sex is almost a better sex life is almost an unintended consequence of just really getting closer as people.
I think it's the intended consequence. It's just one that is so hidden. It's not really known until you get it.
No, I am really curious. So we had this big breakthrough yesterday, and then the place that we're at has a hot spring that's like 95 degrees, and it's probably barely 70 out. So it feels amazing. You just can't believe you're in a pool this warm. And we're just sort of like basking in this afterglow of this big breakthrough and closeness we've created, and kissing and kissing. And the bliss feeling that I had was absolutely through the roof. So I'm wondering if that's if that's a type of orgasm, because like, it's clearly feels like sexual energy, and the bliss was amazing, and it carried through the whole day. I mean, it was hard to sleep last night, how much amazing energy came. But I don't think of that as sexual because our clothes were on.
Of course, it can be sexual if your clothes are on, right? No, I understand that impulse, and I don't know if I would call that an orgasm. I would definitely say that it's running energy, and that's adding up to a lot of that bliss that you're finding, a lot of those oxytocin hormones, and quite possibly serotonin and vasopressin hormones that are creating a lovely cocktail for both of you that's putting big, big smiles on your face.
Yeah, that makes sense. That it's like, it's a state of being.
Yeah.
And it, to me, it felt like as the day was going on, I was kind of realizing like, this is a choice, and this is a result of just not hiding something or not like, forcing something down. And it's just more along the lines of relaxing into life as it is and not having fear about judgment or rejection or whatever. It's like,
Not letting the fear win. Because fear will still be there. But you don't have to let it be the one that takes home the victory.
yeah.
It's interesting, too, that you guys have brought up a couple of times this, like, what's acceptable, what's not. It's not okay to do this. It's not okay to do that. Are you familiar with the Madonna whore paradox?
Well, I understand it that Italian guys don't like to have sex with their wives after they've had kids because it's like she's the mother of your children, and this is like this dirty thing to do. So men like to have a whore and they like to have a mother, and it's like the two don't mix. So they keep them really well separated. And it's definitely
Well,
not
it's
all Italian guys, but
right. It's not just for Italian men, but I think that is a big piece of where it came from, that Catholic Church and the fact that that's based in Italy. And the whole concept of this is acceptable and this is not, that is something that every couple has to face at some point and find out, are they going to be the kind of couple that says we can do these acceptable things and we can't do these acceptable things, whether they talk about it or not. Most of the time it's not even spoken about. It's just mentally, there's now this wall, right? And it is not a helpful thing. It is something that I recommend taking a look at in your conversations. Talk about what you guys are drawn to and excited by, because I think you'll find more often than not things that you believe are not acceptable are actually pretty hot and interesting, or the things that you are afraid are too hot and interesting are actually like, yeah, that's not actually that big of a deal because I have this person right here who I actually get a fantastic connection with when we talk. So
I would,
that is
sorry.
go ahead.
I would say for me, I don't have the feelings around like what's acceptable because I feel pretty comfortable in my body and really open with exploring different things or trying different things. For me, it's what comes up is yeah, let's do anything and hopefully I feel something. Like I'm expecting some like sensation change or shift or intensity. And then when that doesn't come, I'm like, oh, okay, now we're doing this cool, sexy thing, but I'm not really there. It's, so it's like I would like to have this relationship with my body where I'm not nervous about not feeling the intensity level that I want and just being able to have fun and allow, whatever naturally is going to happen without those thoughts in my head.
Yeah, I'm excited for another conversation post de-armoring.
Okay.
Because I think you're going to have a wild experience there, and you're going to come back with a lot more to say and or ask about that. Because, yeah, it will do something for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it will make you face that too. I mean, you'll have to be facing every day what is my body doing, and am I okay with that? So I think you'll be surprised at how quickly you adapt and how what seemed erotic but didn't add any energy into your physical system will be easier for you to use that as a filtering mechanism. Like what actually is bringing some kind of arousal or energy right now. It doesn't have to be the thing that you think it should be. It doesn't have to be this intense, sexy thing. In fact, oftentimes it isn't. Especially oftentimes at first, it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, can you give an example?
An example of... See, I know we've talked a little bit, maybe even in the last episode, about being in your body and pausing until your body says yes and to go. And I might have told you this too. But I know at work when I'm with somebody new, it's usually me that has to set the pace slow enough for my body to catch up with us. And so I've learned, and really this is through trial and error, but I've learned that it takes at least, 10 minutes, bare minimum, of making out for me to feel this like softness, this opening in my body and this relaxing in my pussy. My pussy lips open up a little bit and I can tell things are changing. Things are ready to move forward to the next step at least. And that is 10 minutes after connecting with the person, having a clean house, having my food, my body completely fed and all of those things. So remember that those are important things too. If you're not supporting yourself, your body, mentally, physically, etc., to actually be present and have an orgasm, of course you're going to get distracted. And even when you do support yourself, you are going to get distracted at first. And you're the one who gets to say, wait, let me tune back in for a second. Maybe let's just kiss more for a little while. Maybe let's do this. Yes, my pussy was wet for a minute, but it's not quite eager for your cock. So let's keep fondling my breasts. Let's keep doing this thing, pull my hair a little bit, or whatever it is that you're finding starts to jumpstart your body a little. But that's your job, is to find what jumpstarts you, what excites you, what arouses you, and then to communicate that so that they know, oh, fuck yeah, that's a hot button. I'm going to push that when I want that.
Thank you. I love
Was that helpful?
Yeah.
I feel like we might have said exactly the same thing last time, but I could be wrong.
I do remember you talking about slow, like go slower than you think, slower, that's it. So I do remember that part. And thank you for that description and everything. That's awesome. I definitely, as far as my communication, I would love to do a better job with telling Brian, like, specifically, what do I want? What feels good? What can he do? I just get kind of quiet and don't, like almost like I'm not entirely participating. Like I'm there, but I'm like waiting for something to happen, so much so that I'm almost like out of the experience. So it's like a balance of staying there, speaking and feeling.
Yeah, it is a little bit of everything. And in my experience, it is possible to go into 100% feeling and to have your partner be willing to just totally pick up on all of your nonverbal signals. And it also takes a little while to get to that, especially if you haven't been honest or real or as expressive about what feels good and what doesn't feel good as most people when they start a new relationship. So the more honest and open you are about that, the quicker he'll find the authentic buttons and the easier it will be. The other thing is, I don't know how much you are participating in this yourself, but if you are laying back and really not doing anything, which is actually really common whenever there's oral sex involved, whether you're receiving or you're giving, usually the person that is receiving has a lot less to do, and keeping them involved somehow can be a way of maintaining that, both that mental and that physical connection. Because there's something about that person is way down there, I can't touch them anymore, they can't touch me. A lot of the erogenous zones that we were just playing with are now gone. Oh no. And so it changes that dynamic if you're not thoughtful about it. I have found that I really, really like to be fingered and to have a vibrator on my clitoris. And so I will team up with my partner to do that. I'm like, hey, I can't do the fingering myself. Would you finger me? I'll play with my clit. Together we'll make me come a couple of times. And that way we'll really start to find those places where they can tell even before I know what I need. But the both of us working together to share makes it, in a way, easier to communicate with words too. Because usually, whoever's fingering me has to find a way to get their hand out of the way of my clitoris, which is not easy. But sometimes they have to sit up, sometimes they have to lay in an awkward way. But once we get that, and then we get some of the other things going, it just becomes a really nice amount of teamwork and intimacy that grows between us. So I don't know if that will help you, if that will work. And that's been something that's worked for me really well.
I would like to do that.
Awesome.
That sounds great. More homework. Here we go.
Well, it should be fun. I call it play work, aka plurk. So you can do your plurk in your camper.
Yes. Oh my God.
Have a good time. Okay, you two. What are you going to take home from your visit to Seattle and from your podcast interview?
I feel like just like being brave enough to be real and be present and taking the risk of saying things and not really having an attachment to an outcome. Yeah, just like leaning into something mysterious that wants to teach something. Yeah, I don't know. And that I want to have more like just connection, like laying around and not being so regimented and rigid around sex. Like have an openness and a playfulness.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that'll serve you really well.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a couple things. One is I feel a lot more desire to explore you and my desires. And I feel like the energy I need to bring is like more drive to push you. And yeah, I feel like I feel some things about drawing you out more and like pushing you to be more open or communicate. And I think that's the big thing that's coming away from the last couple of days is like not guessing, not pretending or whatever, but like really communicating more and really holding the line that you do it too. You really just push in and be more present in the middle of it. It's like instead of dancing around the ring, like just square up in the middle and fight. Don't avoid it, just get to it.
Yeah.
That's some sage advice.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I think I will leave you two in your camper to fight or whatever you're going to do next. And thank you so much for being on the show. I'd love to have you guys on at another time, too. I think this will be fun for your explorations.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Maybe we can get together. You can leave your clothes on. We'll have sex, and we can just like that could be the podcast, right?
That actually would be a fascinating podcast. That is how this show started. Did you know that?
No.
Yes. Yeah. One of my lovers was going down on me and offering me scientific facts about hormones and biology and genitals while he was doing that. And I was like, oh my God, other people need to hear this. So we just set up a microphone and recorded it.
That is awesome.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks.
See you later.
Hey there, Pleasure Seeker. Well, that's it for today's conversation. Here at Pleasure Central Radio, we love using conscious communication, science geekery, and copious amounts of true pleasure to improve our partnerships, our money, and our love lives. And we hope you do too. If you loved what you heard here, we'd love a review. You can do this easily on podcast players like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it's an easy way to help more people discover the show without you having to actually bring it up with them. To hear other episodes of the podcast and get notified immediately when a new episode is released, follow me on your favorite podcast player. Find out more and get in touch at pleasurecentralradio.com. Your thought to ponder today is
not having a goal of some kind of a climax and just touching and enjoying and talking and, like relaxing.